Okay, I think we're going to get started on SOLIDWORKS Composer 301. For all of you that are returning from the previous two webinars, thank you for joining us again. Anyone new, today we'll be talking about customer experience. So if I get into the slide here. And now when I say customer experience, we don't necessarily have to think of it as only being for customers. The interactive content can be used for in-house purposes as well. And we'll get more into what customer experience is all about in a little bit. But as a recap of the first week, we talked about product documentation and creating, importing models from SOLIDWORKS, creating great images from them, and then using links in Word to be able to reduce our documentation time whenever we have ECOs or ECNs. The second Composer webcast, we talked about animated instructions, and we talked about creating animations, which, in turn, are easy to understand for someone who's watching versus looking at a piece of paper with a bunch of images and text. It's always easier to understand when you can see it in action. And, in creating animations, we looked at saving time and increasing the quality of our content. And then today, Customer Experience 301, we'll kind of get into what I mean by customer experience in just a minute. This time around, one thing I want to bring up, we won't be putting poll questions up throughout the webinar because it was our understanding that it was getting in the way of what I was showing on my screen. So we'll save those until the very end. I think, I'll try to keep it to 40, 45 minutes at the most, and we'll do questions the last 15 minutes. But before you head out, I will throw out those poll questions, real yes or no questions. Did you find this helpful? Are you interested in anything, in learning more about it? Things like that. So we'll throw those poll questions up at the very end. If you could just answer those before you head out, that'd be great. We really appreciate it. So when we're talking about customer experience, we're talking about something like this on the screen. Right now it just looks like I have a static image of a helicopter sitting over a helicopter pad with a couple detail views, it looks like, at the bottom. But what this really is, this is the interactive content. This is the Composer player, the free version of Composer, embedded into my PowerPoint. And it's actually my 3D model right in my PowerPoint. And when we talk about interactive content, I've created links on these images. If you notice, my cursor is changing as I go over these. I've created links on all of these to bring us to other views or animation segments. Also on this GoEngineer tab, if I click on this, it actually brings up a URL. So we can create links to outside sources versus just inside of Composer. If I go ahead and click on my work instructions here, it brings me to that view that I call maintenance procedures. And this probably looks familiar from last week, but I have options now to click on the tail or the cockpit, and you can kind of tell because I have them pulsing. And when we create an event, we also have the option to create a pulse. And the pulse is basically just a flickering light. It's just changing the color of the component for a quick, I think it's set at like 800 milliseconds per flash. And it just allows your end user to know what they can click on when they're looking at your model. So this is my 3D model still. I now have the ability to click on something. And what it'll do is in that event, I linked it to an animation segment. So this is the animation we created last week. But you'll notice I didn't have to go into an animation toolbar and look at a timeline. You got to keep in mind this is for my end user. So I don't want them to see all that stuff. I want them to just be able to click on stuff and see how things are put together or taken apart. At the same time, we can create links to go back. So this is just an image I actually took off of Google, a little back button, and I'm just clicking back, and it's linking back to this last view that I showed. And now from here, I can click on the tail, and now we can see another animation segment I created that's just talking about removing this tail fin and placing it a little closer. If the center of gravity of my helicopter is off or something. So real short animation segments, but each one then has this option to go back. So I come back to my maintenance procedures view, then I'll click back again. I go back to my main view. So this is kind of my table of contents, if you will. And then from here I can go into my bill of material. And another thing we'll be talking about today is creating intelligent views. And intelligent views are basically, we're just capturing specific properties of components. And what I mean by that is right now, this is my 3D model. It doesn't matter where my camera is looking at my model. If I want, I can create an explode sequence, and it's moving to a view where my model has been exploded. Once it's exploded, if I want, I create another intelligent view that is showing my balloon callouts at 100% opaque. And in these balloon callouts, I actually label them as parametric so that as I move around my model, they do their best to not cover up any geometry. But then at the same time, I can hide these, and then I can collapse my model. So keep in mind, we are on a webinar. When I'm collapsing and exploding or changing between views, it may lag a little bit and not look, incredibly appealing, but on my screen, everything transitions very smoothly and looks very nice. So I can come back from here, go back to my main page, and that's really it. That's what we're going to be creating today, is this nice little document that I can package onto a CD and send along with my helicopter to my customers, or I could publish this exact content to my website using our HTML publisher. I can have individuals, if they ever have questions about how to fix something on their helicopter, they can come to my website, and this will pull up, and it's interactive. Gives our customers a great customer experience when they're trying to figure something out with their helicopter. So, customer experience, it ends up being very easy to navigate, very easy to understand, and then a lot of the value is you're just increasing the quality to your customer. They come onto the website and they do all of this stuff. They get to manipulate a 3D model. They think it's really cool. Not everyone is dealing with 3D content on a day-to-day basis like we are, so it's pretty neat for someone to come on and see this stuff for the first time. And then lastly, and this is kind of a smaller part, but if you have this interactive content that helps your customer understand how to fix things, they end up doing their own technical support, and so maybe we can get away from having, spending so much time helping other people to understand or maintain these products that we sell. So let's move on to the next segment here. This is kind of the route we're going to take to create what we were just looking at. So our first thing we're going to do is we're going to map out how we want things to be linked together. And for something like this, I kind of went through and just because it was kind of a smaller package, I kind of just thought about it in my mind and put it together. But I think a lot of the time, if you're going to be creating some real extensive content where there's a lot of animation segments, a lot of views, a lot of buttons that people will be clicking on, you're going to have to probably write this down. Maybe make yourself a little map, just something to revert back to, put it up on your wall so that you can keep that in mind. But so we're going to say I've already kind of done that. I already know how I want to put my stuff together. The first thing I'm going to want to do is create my main page or my table of contents. And from there, that's when we'll start creating the sub-content. And the sub-content's really just going to be additional views that we'll use for linking together. And then lastly, we'll have to go through and we'll create the animation sequences that we want to portray in our interactive content. Once we're done creating that bulk content of our material, we'll move into creating intelligent views. And this is a little thumbnail from within Composer of what an intelligent view looks like. It's kind of got this grayed out slash through it. It's just specifying to us, the people that are producing the content, that this view is only capturing specific properties. And once we go in and we start to create these intelligent views, it should make a little more sense. And then the very last thing we'll want to do today is we'll just go through and we'll just check the links that we've created and make sure that all of our buttons are pointing in the right direction and helping our consumer navigate through our content in a nice fashionable way. And then once we've gone through and checked everything and made sure that our content is complete, then we're basically ready to move forward and publish out to the specific to the end use. So if we want to put this on our website, we'll publish to HTML. If we want this to be a package file that we can email to someone, we'll create an executable file. Maybe we want to be able to send digital PDFs with player embedded into the PDF. So you think about that before we start a lot of this content. But today, I want to publish this to HTML because I want this to be available on my website for anyone. Even someone who's just interested in buying a helicopter. It's fun for them to see it online in this 3D environment. So let's jump into Composer. Here's my interface here. I just kind of want to go through. I have 4 views to start. I have started creating a little bit of my content. A lot of this you'll notice is somewhat recognizable from last week. So I kind of have my cover image here. We're going to go ahead and create some links and bring in some logo, like the GoEngineer logo will be up here. We'll put in those little thumbnail views, the little detail views down here. Those views, those little thumbnails on my main page will link to this view, my animated instructions. And this is where we'll take this cockpit and this tail and we'll create links to animation segments. My bill of material view. I've already gone through and created a bill of material, essentially just coming up to my workshops here and using the bill of material workshop. I applied a bill of material ID to all of my components and then sorted my bill of material, alphabetically with description. You could sort any way you want. So the other last thing that I created, or that we created last week, was the animation. Also note, I put in what we call markers. So if I click up in this area here, I'm able to type in, whatever I want. And these markers are what actually, the markers are what we need to call out specific animation segments. So I've added a marker at the beginning, and as this plays through, if I zoom my timeline out, you'll notice that I have 2 segments here. Oops. I have end of cockpit replacement and start of tail placement. And then at the very end, if I move down here, I have end of tail placement. So I really have 2 segments here, but I have to have a marker at the beginning and end of each segment. And in between these 2 segments, really all that's happening, because this will never be played to my end user, I'm just removing the items. So I just changed the material back to what it was for my cockpit, and then I just removed my instructions. And then by the time it gets to this specific point in time, it's ready to start the next segment of my animation. So this in-between time here between these 2 segments, I know no one's going to be seeing this because I'm only going to be playing specific segments in front of this marker and then after this marker. So that's something to keep in mind. But I'll jump out of the animation, and we're going to start with our cover page. So our cover image, we want to add a logo in the upper corner, and we want to link it to our website. And then we also want to create the links to our bill of material view and our animation instruction view. So the first thing I want to do here is come to my author tab, and I'm going to add my logo box. So I'm going to go ahead and specify a box size here, and then I'm going to come down to map path under texture, and I'm going to find my logo. I'm going to go ahead and open that. Now I can kind of just place this wherever I see fit. That looks pretty good. And then while this is selected, I'm going to look into the property manager for this image, this 2D image, and I'm going to come down here to link. So we have this tab in here called Event, and under Event we have Pulse and Link. Pulse is what I was talking about earlier when I want my components to be flashing to allow the user to know what they can click on and make it very noticeable. And under Pulse, we have the option to have it pulse at 200, 400, or 800 milliseconds. I'm going to leave this at none because I just want this to I don't want this to be flashing on my main page. So under Link, if I click in here, you'll notice this little ellipse on the right-hand side. I can click on that. And now I can come here down to the bottom. If I wanted to, I could have it linked to a file. But I want it to link to a URL. And then I can just go ahead and type in my website. And I'll say OK. The link is shown here. And I want to save this in this view. So I can go ahead and just keep this link highlighted, highlight the image, and I can update views with selected actors and or properties. And now whatever happens when I click on this in the player, it will bring me to my website. And a lot of the time as you're creating this content, you want to ensure that you've created the link correctly. So we need to be able to test it somehow without saving the file, opening it in the player to see if it's working. So what we can do actually is down here in the bottom right-hand corner is turn off design mode. So when we turn off design mode, we're essentially looking into Composer as if it was the player. So now if I come up here, you'll notice my cursor changes. It says, oh yeah, there's something here, there's a link. If I click on this, sure enough, it brings me to my website. So we know that that link is working correctly. Now just keep in mind when we go ahead and if I want to be able to move this now that I know this link works correctly, every time I click on this, it's going to pull up my website. So I need to make sure that I'm in design mode, and now I can go ahead and move this text box where I want it. So make sure design mode is on when you're actually designing, and then you'll turn it off to test your linkage and make sure everything's working properly. So you saw now what we did here. I actually brought in an image, and then by clicking on the image, I came into the property manager and I manually added a link to a URL. So not very hard to do. Composer makes that very easy. But if we ever need to link to another view, it's actually very, very easy. So I have this animated instructions. If I hold down a control key and just drag and drop this onto my screen here, Composer actually creates a little detailed image. Oops, I think I grabbed the wrong thing here. There we go. So Composer actually creates a little detailed view, and if I click on this view and I come down to its link, it already has a link to that specific view. So it's very, very easy to create links between views by just holding down the control key and dragging and dropping the view onto the screen. So I want to do the same thing with the bill of material. I'll bring this over to this other side. So now I have these two images, little detail views, and I've actually already created some text that I want to put them underneath. So I'm just going to turn on that text that I created. And one of them, oh, I think I deleted this one. That's okay. So I'm going to take this text that I created. I'm just going to make a copy of that. Bring this over here, and I'm just going to change this to bill of material. Go ahead and exit that, and I can place this, and all I can do now, if I want to, I can stretch out these detail views, make them a little bigger, and I'm just going to place them kind of right over our other items here. Keep in mind this is still my 3D model back here, so I can just kind of orient that how I like. Now I've created some nice looking cover material that makes it easy to understand for my end user. And if I wanted to, I could make these images flash, but because it's my main cover image, I'm going to keep them from doing that. Also, if you want to place these on the same line, we have a couple different methods. We can use this magnet line to align these, or if I click on here and I look at its properties, I can see it's 135 from the top, and that's measuring from this upper left-hand corner of any image. So it's specifying how far it is from the left side of the paper. So here, if I want to type in 30, and then from the top, maybe I want it to be, we'll do 140. From here, I think we said we'll do 245. And from the top, I think I said 130. Nope, what did I say? I said 140. So I'll go ahead and put 140 here. Now I know these are aligned. I could do the same thing for the text underneath, but for time purposes, I'm just going to place them accordingly. Now, I've created this nice view. I had some of it created initially, so I need to go ahead and update my view with the changes I've made. And now just to test the links here on these two, I'm going to turn off design mode, and I'm just going to click on work instructions. Now you see that one works nicely. If I click back on cover, I can click on this other one to make sure that one's working. That looks good. So really in a matter of, a few minutes, I was able to create a very nice main page that my users will look at when they first open my document. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So we've created a link to my work instructions. I'm going to go ahead and go to that page. And now from this page, I want to create some links for these two components on the screen. I also want my user to be able to go back to the cover image. So I'm going to go ahead and create a back button that I'll place down here. The back button has already, actually, I've put it in. I'll just go ahead and add that separately here after we do the links to the cockpit and the tail. So if I go ahead and click on this component now, just like we click on any 2D image or text panel, I'm just going to click on this part, and I'm going to come down to its event tab under properties, and I'm going to go ahead and just create a link. And the link that I want to create is to, if we look at the animation tab, when the user clicks on the cockpit, I want it to start playing this segment between cockpit removal and the end of that. So I want it to play this specific segment of the animation, and only that specific segment of the animation. So I'll go back to my view, click here, and if I come down to its link now, we come under URL, I actually click, and I come to play marker sequence. And when I click on this, Composer is, intuitive. It grabs all of the markers you've created in your animation, and I can go ahead and pick where I want it to start. So I'm going to say cockpit removal and say OK. I'm going to do the same thing with the tail. I'm going to come to the link, come down here, play marker sequence, and I'm going to say start of tail placement and say OK. Now, with the tail, and with both of them, I should have done them at the same time, but I can actually grab both these components now, and I can come to pulse and change this to 800 milliseconds. So because I have both components selected, it's not showing me either link because they have different links. But now if we go into just one of these items and come down here, you'll see that I changed the pulse for both. It also maintained its link that I had already created. So now that I have those links and pulses created, I want to just make sure that I'm saving my view, because we need to save that property change. And then the last thing I need to do is add my image, my back button. So I'm going to go ahead and add the 2D image. I'll put this down here. And then while that's selected, I'll go into its map path, and I'll find my green back button. And I don't like the shadow on here, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. And while this is selected as well, I want this to link back to my cover page. So I'm going to go ahead and link it to a view. And I'm going to specify which view I want it to go back to cover. And I'll say OK. And then because I've changed the property of something on this view, I need to go ahead and update the view. And now let's go outside of design mode. Let's turn that off, and you'll notice my pulsing is working correctly. And if I wanted to, I could click on this. It would play the segment of animation that we specified. So we have this view complete. let's go ahead to the bill of material. And now this is where we're going to start by creating intelligent views. We want to save properties of all these actors. When I say actors, I should say components. We want to save the location of these components in the collapsed state, and we want to save the location of the components in the exploded state. So to kind of start, let's start with selecting all of our components, because this is what we want to enable our selection from. And then from here, I'm coming up into my workshops, and we've seen a lot of these workshops already, but I'm going to go ahead and click on my Views workshop. I'm going to hide the timeline so we can see a little more. So with my selection here, select items to capture. I'm going to apply this to the actors that I have selected, and the property that I want to capture is the location. So keep that in mind. If I wanted to, I could capture not only location, but maybe opacity. And we'll actually go through and, using this opacity property, we're going to capture the balloon callouts, the item numbers for each of these using this opacity property. The other thing I want to capture is the bill of material description, because when I explode and collapse, I want my bill of material to remain on this page. So once I have all these selected, I have my components selected on the screen, I just go ahead and create. And you'll see here I have this view with kind of a slash mark through it. That's just for us to realize that it's an intelligent view. So I'm going to call this collapse. And now, oops, with all these still selected, I'm going to explode these to a exploded state using my linear explode tool. So it's my easy exploding tool. It does everything so quickly. It's very nice. And once all of these have been exploded now, I'm capturing the same things, these actors in a specific location, as well as the bill of material. Go ahead and create. And now I'm going to call this one explode. So let's take a look at this. Generally, in the last 2 sessions, we've created views that have captured camera angles, location of actors. It's captured everything that was on the screen. All we're doing now is capturing the location of these components. So it doesn't matter where my camera is looking at my model. If I change to collapse, it'll collapse my model. If I change to explode, it'll explode my model. It doesn't matter where my model is on the screen. It's going to go ahead and change to those intelligent views. All I'm capturing is the property of the location of each of these components. So we'll leave this in the collapse state. Actually, maybe we'll leave it in the exploded state. No, let's leave it in the collapse state. Sorry, I can't make up my mind today. I'm going to go ahead and grab all of these components now. I don't want to transform them. I just want to grab all of these components because I want to go into my bill of material workshop and create some callouts. So you'll notice over here under my bill of material tab, I have all my items listed. This is the same bill of material workshop where I generated my bill of material ID to create my on-screen bill of material. All I'm doing now is I just want to create callouts for each of my items. And then these callouts, I just want these to be parametric. It's kind of going back to where they automatically move to hide themselves, not hide themselves, they automatically move to not cover up any geometry. So if we kind of move this around, you see they kind of try to move. I know I have a lot of components here. Parametric is a very nice tool. Not every application is going to be the best with parametric, but I'm going to leave this at parametric because I know this is my interactive content. I want my users to be able to move the model around while they're looking at the item numbers. So I've created my callouts. Once I created them, you see they're all highlighted orange. And now what I want to do is I want to capture the opacity of my callouts. So right now they're at, they're fully opaque. They're at 255. I'm going to go outside of my bill of material workshop and go back to my views workshop. And with all of these selected, with the actors I have selected, I'm going to I don't care about their location anymore. I just care about their opacity. Also, when someone's turning on and off the visibility of these callouts, I do want them to still be able to see the bill of material. So I'm going to leave this highlighted as well. Then I'm going to go ahead and create. So I have my opacity at 255. This will be my view that shows my callout. So I've created this third view, and I'm going to call this shown. And then these are all still selected again. I'm going to change their opacity down to 0, so they're hidden, and use the same items I already have here, capturing the opacity. So I'm going to go ahead and create, and I'll call this hidden. So now we've created these 4 intelligent views. If I go ahead and drop on this shown, goes through and shows my callouts. If I go hidden, they are removed. So now that we've created these very awesome intelligent views, we need to be able to utilize them on screen. Our users are not going to be able to just drag and drop these views onto the screen, plus they would never know what they were for. So what we need to do is make it easier for them to understand. We need to create buttons for exploding and collapsing. So I'm going to go ahead to this explode 2D text box. I'm going to scroll down to its event, and I'm going to create a link to the intelligent view explode. So I'm going to go ahead to the URL, come into this view, and I want when the user clicks on this text box, it will explode or move to that explode view. So I'll say OK, and then under this collapse, I'm going to do the same thing but with the collapse view. So I've created these two. I'm going to go ahead and save my bill of material because I've added new properties to these. And the next thing I want to do is create a couple labels for the balloon callouts. So I'm going to go ahead to my author tab, come to 2D text, and I'm going to type shown, and I'll create another 2D, and I'll call this hide. Actually, not shown. I'll say I want this to say show. And using styles, I have this text box selected. I can come to my styles, and I've actually created a style that is, oh, maybe I didn't create the style. That's okay. If I select these two boxes, because I already have this style created down here, I actually have this option to take my selected items, and I can copy the appearance properties from this tab. And that goes ahead and changes the appearance of these to make them look the same. And so now that these boxes have been created, I'll click on each one individually, come down to their links, and this is my balloon callout, so I want this to show the view where I'm showing the balloons in full opacities, fully opaque. So I'm creating a link for each of these. Come up to my view here. I'll hide this one, hidden. And I'll go ahead and save this bill of material view with all the changes I've just made. And let's exit design mode and make sure that our components work. So I'll go ahead and explode. My components are exploded apart. I can collapse them, explode, and then we'll make sure our balloon callouts work. We show, I can rotate my model around, and I can hide. And then I can collapse. So very cool stuff making this content. You know, it takes a little bit of creativity, but giving your end user the ability to do these kind of things is priceless. People will love it, or people do love it. I talk to the customers that we have now currently who are creating this interactive content, and they said it's just great. They get comments from their customers all the time about how neat it is to be able to go in and, you know, just it's easier to understand, easier to troubleshoot something, stuff like that. So I'm going to go ahead and close this workshop. One other thing I wanted to point out here, in your bill of material properties, you have the option to highlight model items. So you see as I hold my cursor over here, it's actually highlighting the item on the screen. That's something I always recommend if you're going to be creating interactive content. It allows your user to really kind of hone in on the part that they're looking for, making sure they're grabbing the correct part. So The very last thing we need to do on this bill of material page is we need to create a back button that brings us back to that cover image. So what I'm going to do here is, because I know I've already created that back button on another image, I could actually come back to this page. Oh, I'm not in design mode. And I can select this back button, and with this actor, this specific actor selected, I can click on the bill of material view, and I can use this option here to update views with selected actors. So when I click on that, it redraws that bill of material view, and if I click on it now, it's kind of hidden, but we can move this out of the way. Let's see here. I have to hide this for a second so I can grab my back button. And then I can go back to my collaboration tab, grab my bill of material, change its opacity back up to 255, and just place this back button where I'd like it. Also notice while it's selected, because I copied it from a previous view where the link had already been created, I don't have to do that. It's already been created. That link is already there. So I'll come back to the view. I'm going to grab this bill of material, and with this item selected, I'm going to select the view, the bill of material. I'm just going to update the view with where the location of that back button is. Okay, so we've created our cover image. We've created our two, our animated instructions view, our bill of material view. All of these four intelligent views we created are also listed here. But the only three views the user will ever see, really, are these three views, because when they're on that bill of material page, they'll technically be looking at other views, but they won't really notice the difference. They'll just think it's interactive. So the last thing we want to do is just double check everything. So I'm in design mode. I'm going to exit design mode, and I'm going to go ahead and click on work instructions. And now from here I have the option to click on either the cockpit or the tail. Let's go ahead and click on the cockpit. And you see now it's playing the animation. If I turn this on, you can see the timeline moving through. So we just want this to play this segment. Keep in mind, this is what the user will be seeing on the main interface area. So notice what happened here. It stopped. It stopped at that next marker. So when you play a specific sequence, it's starting on whatever marker you call out in the link, and it's playing through until it hits that next marker. Whatever that next marker is, that's where it's going to stop. So if you want it to play, if you want other markers in here to specify to yourself where things are, instead of doing the link to play a specific sequence, you'll have it play from this point, and then you'll actually make something, at this point here where you wanted the animation to end, you'll actually give something a pulse. Whenever something has a pulse where it blinks in the animation, the timeline or the animation itself will pause or stop. So that's something to keep in mind. But to keep things easy on yourself, playing specific sequences between markers I've found is the easiest way to play this sequence. And now if any of you have picked up on it, right now the user plays this sequence, they have nothing else to click on the screen. It would kind of be like a dead end to them. So what we need to do here in the animation is create a back button down here in the bottom hand corner. So what we can do is, because I know I've already created a back button and it's been recorded in the collaboration tab, let's go to one of these views with the back button. And I'm going to click, I'm going to go back into design mode, and I'm going to click on this back button, and I want to give this a name. I'm going to call this back button. And now if I go into my collaboration tree, you see it's been named back button up here. I have that selected. I'm going to actually move back into my animation by just clicking on the timeline. So at this point right here, I want this back button to become opaque. So I'm going to go ahead to my effects tool, and I'm going to fade this in. Oops, I think I didn't. I'm going to fade in. Oh, there we go. So it fades in here. I need to call out the map path again. So I'm just go ahead and grab that green button, open that. And now what will happen, because I changed the property map path, I want to make sure that's a neutral property. I also need to record that property change in the animation. Now when this comes back, I want to make sure. I come back here. So you see what's happening here. My map path is changing from here to here. But we want this map path, let's see here, to be at this point, and I want it to be a neutral property of this callout. That's giving me some issues. I don't like that. Let's go ahead and just leave this as is. So it's going to come to this point. My back button will illuminate and show up. And now because I have this selected and I'm using it from a previous view, oh, it's subscribed to a style. This is why. Let's go ahead and unsubscribe the style. And let me try this. Map path, set that property, make that a, I'll have to look more into that. I don't want to waste too much time just looking at that. But so we have this back button. It pops up right at this point. And with this selected now, we can create a link inside of the animation to bring us back to a view called animated instructions. So I'll say OK there. And because I've changed this link, I can go ahead and create a property key because otherwise that won't be saved in my animation. So if we watch this, I come to this point, animation, the link pops up, and it's shown. The next thing, I don't want this to remain for the rest of my animation. So in between here, if I zoom in on this area, I will actually, you know what I'm going to do? At this point here, I want this to actually be the back button. So I'm going to go ahead and find that map path again and just add that. And then I'm going to go ahead and save that. So now when this turns on, it's my back button the whole time. I'm just going to copy this key where it's, the opacity is down to 0 and just bring it around to this other side. Because again, between these two markers, this is just the portion of the animation that our user won't see. We're just removing things. So if I click here, we're just removing things from view so that at the beginning of the next marker sequence, everything is where we want it. So I've just gone and created, I've copied the key where this button becomes opaque again, invisible. So we can go ahead and try this again, and we can make sure that this back button is working properly. Before I do that, I'm going to highlight this back button, then I'm going to filter for just its 3 keys here. And I'm going to take these 3 keys, holding down Control, and I'm going to bring these to the end because I want this back button to pop up again at the end of my animation. So I'm going to actually bring these down here for a second. It does copy the marker. You'll just need to delete that. But then I can just move this so that at the very end, if I turn this off here, my back button illuminates again. So let's save everything here. And I'm going to go back to my Views tab, back to my Animated Instructions view. And I'm going to remove this animation timeline, and I'm going to exit design mode, and I'm going to click on my cockpit. Make sure that the sequence between the two markers works properly, and that my image for my back button comes up properly, and that the link for that works. My back button comes up, I click on that, brings me back to my maintenance procedures. So the links are working properly. Everything looks good. So the next thing I want to do is basically maybe just double check each of my views. Can turn on design mode. I can click here and I can just come down and make sure my links are linked to the proper items, bill of material. And then I go to these here, click on this. I have this pulsing and playing a link. Oops. And I have the same thing on the tail, pulsing and playing the specific segment. My bill of material view, I have this button going to the view shown, hidden, explode, collapse. This one goes back to my cover, so that's perfect. So I'm all done with my content. Well, I guess the last one I want to make sure of is my logo that brings me to my website. Everything looks good. So now really all I'm doing is coming to File. I'm coming down to Publish, and I can publish this as HTML. So you also see the PDF here. This really, I would click on HTML, and then what will happen, if I come down here, I'm going to save that out. It's actually saving 4 different files. So you'll just, you would just store these on your server. But this HTML now, when I click on this, I open this up, I'll have to allow some blocked content. It's going to load the document we just created. So we're just kind of looking at this as if it was, oops, did I not click this? We're just looking at this from the end user's standpoint. They would just be sitting at their home computer. Maybe they're looking at their final, they're looking at their helicopter. Their kid just threw it on the floor. They need to know how to fix the cockpit. So now this is our Composer player interface. One other thing I want to point out before we kind of interact with it is when I come in here to publish as an HTML, I do have some options. If I go to HTML output, I left mine on simple because I want the user to have to click on things on the model. I want them to have to click on buttons. But if you want other things available, you can show those other things. So here in the bill of material, you would have views that would be available. You'd have the bill of material available. If you have, metadata from SOLIDWORKS, you can show that, descriptions, part numbers, materials, stuff like that. So we do have other options when we actually are publishing as HTML. But, this is what my user is seeing. If I maximize, and they're looking through here. They have a few icons at the top, so they can learn. They also have option buttons over here if they don't know how to manipulate a 3D model. It shows them. Let's see here. Not properties. Standard toolbar. Here we go. Question. Navigation help. Current tool. How to rotate, pan, zoom, all that stuff. So gives your user the idea, and they can go through here and they can click on things. This is pulling up my website, which is great. They can go directly there and buy all of my software, which is awesome. I can click on work instructions. The user's like, oh, well, hey, there's a cockpit. It's blinking. I'm going to click on that. And it goes ahead and it plays the animation, plays all of our content, which is just great. Users love this kind of stuff. It's fun to make too. Once you're done, you're like, yep, I made that. So I'm going to go to the back button. We'll just make sure our other views are working. We'll go to bill of material. Explode this. Oh, that's so cool. Show the callouts. Oh yeah, see? I'm missing a link here. But you get the idea. Creating these intelligent views is very neat, very awesome. Publishing the HTML takes just a second, and it's a good thing because now I've come in here and I've found out that one of my links isn't working correctly. So I just want to go back in to my model. This was a previously published HTML, so it wouldn't be the same in the item we were just looking at. But I would just go in and make the change and then republish to the HTML, just overwrite the other one. So minimize that. So let's look back at what we did. We mapped out how we wanted our links to be created between our views and our animation sequences. And then we created our main view. From there, I had already kind of created some of the main views and the animations. But we went through and we created the intelligent views, all the links. We made sure things were working properly, except for that one. But checking the links and events at the end, obviously very important, as you just saw. So once we were done, we published the HTML, and that was it. We created that content. We were able to hand that over to our IT department, say, hey, throw this on our website, make it available, give us the link, we can send to people or include it in their products or whatever. So that was kind of it. This is just kind of a look back of all 3 webinars, and I just want to say I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy days to sit down with me and go through some of this stuff. I really think Composer is a great tool, and if any of you ever have questions or maybe it's something you're interested in purchasing or incorporating into your company, please don't hesitate to call me. I love working on projects with people, so if you need to pitch an idea and use some of your own CAD models to do it, I'm more than willing to help you out. So feel free to call or contact me anytime, and we can go ahead and look at that. So we've just thrown up a poll. If you don't mind, before you exit the webinar, just quick answer I think there's how many questions? 4 questions, and if you could just answer those real quick. We'll leave this poll open here for just a minute, and at the same time I will look through questions and try to answer what I can.